All right, welcome to TIL Talks with Chris White, where we talk TILs, tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, and all advanced cell and gene therapies, both with patients and caregivers, along with industry leaders. Let's get going. As a reminder, I am not a medical professional or medical expert. I am only a professional and expert on my story and my experience. If you are needing or seeking medical advice or assistance, please reach out to your care team. Today, I'm talking with Mrs. Victoria Gray. I met Victoria at the Emily Whitehead Foundation Believe Ball in Philadelphia in September of 2024. Victoria is the first ever patient to receive CRISPR gene editing, that's CRISPR, in a clinical trial that cured her from a lifetime of sickle cell disease. And that treatment was approved December of 2023. Get ready as we talk about how this advanced gene therapy and a clinical trial not only improved, but saved Victoria's life and has inspired others. Here we go. All right, we're rolling. Hey, Victoria, how's it going? Thank you for coming on Till Talks. Give us a little 101 about Victoria Gray and who you are and why you're here.
Well, it's a lot to say about who Victoria Gray is, but first off, I'm a mother, wife, and a 39-year-old sickle cell warrior. I lived with sickle cell my entire life. Had my first crisis at 3 months old, and those continue to repeat my whole life until at the age of 34, I became the first person to undergo CRISPR gene therapy for the treatment of sickle cell disease.
That is incredible. For those that aren't really too familiar with sickle cell and CRISPR, give us a little background about what sickle cell is
Well,
and how
sickle
it led you to CRISPR.
Okay. Sickle cell disease is a hereditary blood disorder. So, what happens is it affects our hemoglobin, and when our hemoglobin is affected, our cells become sickle shaped, which is hard, sticky, and it gets stuck in blood vessels, arteries, and block off essential supply and oxygen to organs, muscles, tissues. And when that happens, it causes severe pain. And the treatment for it for many years was only IV fluids, narcotic pain medicines, and red blood cell transfusions. So living with that disease is a challenge within itself.
What age did you start feeling your first symptoms, and how did you get the diagnosis that this is what you have?
Well, my symptoms started at 3 months old, triggered by my mom just giving me a bath at night, and I started to cry and I wouldn't stop. She had to take me to the ER, and that's when she found out that I had sickle cell disease. I was having my first sickle cell crisis, and they also told her that I would only live to see 7 years old.
That's got to be intense for a mother to hear that. Tell me a little bit about your path to seeing the doctors and how they were able to diagnose you with this. Is it just as simple as running labs?
Yes, my diagnosis came from lab work. That night that my mom took me to the hospital, they saw that my cells was sickle, and that's how I received the diagnosis and started treatment from there. And treatment is just at that time as a child, because it weakens your immune system. I had to take penicillin every day, folic acid, and pain medicine at that time as a kid for me was Tylenol 3. That was my at home pain medicine. And when that didn't work, I would go into the hospital for about a week, sometimes two, and receive IV fluids, blood transfusions, and then IV morphine at the time. And that was just repeated over and over. I would go home as a kid, start to recover, bounce back, and sometimes 2 months, max three, I would be right back in the hospital. But as I grew older and got into my teen years, those 1 week every 3, 4 months turned into two week stays every 2 months for sure. And by the time I reached my 20s, I was in month long. My longest stay was 3 months in the hospital with a debilitating sickle cell crisis. I lost my ability to use my legs, my ability to use my arms. I was completely bedridden from just due to pain. And because my muscles wasn't getting the oxygen that it needed, I had to go through a long rehabilitation program just to gain the strength to stand on my legs again, to use a fork to eat. I started to decline. My heart began to fail. My organs was damaged. I had to get my gallbladder took out, but I didn't do that till I was 34. So it's just one thing failing after another.
So it's safe to say that you probably spent half your life or more in the hospital?
Yes, hospital was my second home, actually. I was going so often, people knew me by name, and I knew most of the staff at the hospitals that I went to frequently. But because they knew me, don't mean they liked me. So a lot of stigma comes along with sickle cell disease, and I experienced that once I transitioned from pediatric care into adult care.
That's just insane to think about how much time you spend growing up, like how much school you miss and how regular and normal it is to literally live in a hospital. Like that's your normal. I got to be honest, I didn't really know what sickle cell was or how it really affects somebody and what that does to a person, and for that being your regular mode of life, you know what I mean? Like it's just wild, like to really try to understand, because I spent a few weeks at a time, a period of time going in and out of the hospital, but nothing to the extent of, what you're describing as often as how frequent. Like hospitals are not designed for people's comfort. You know what I mean? Like that's wild. Did you move around a lot living a kid, or is it pretty much like the same area, hospital organization, that sort of thing?
Pretty much the same. I moved to a different area about 2 hours away from where I grew up. So, I came to a different hospital at the age of 14, but I was still going to the, hospital that I had been visiting until I turned about 18, 19, and had to transition into adult care. And I saw the smaller hospital here 5 minutes away from my home. The bigger hospital is an hour away. But because of the stigma, once I transitioned into adult care, it didn't make a difference which hospital I went to. So I often chose to go to the smaller one because why go to the bigger one? I would have a much longer wait, and I'm talking 6 to 12 hours in the ER waiting. Can barely breathe, most times can't walk, and have to watch a white woman pretty much come in with pink eye and get called to the back before a person who's out here dying from lack of oxygen, severe pain. It crushed me. So why waste my time going to the bigger hospital when I can still deal with the stigma at the same hospital, but because it's smaller, the wait time would be less and still experience the same things and the gaps in care.
And so once you did get admitted, they started giving you fluids. Was it almost guaranteed every time that you would be getting a blood transfusion?
Not every time. I didn't need one every time, but most times, like I could say 90% of the time, I was getting a blood transfusion.
And then so let's just, what would that be, like every other month you were saying?
Yes,
Something like that?
about every other month, and close to time before I received CRISPR, I was almost there every month. Things were failing. My heart was failing. I was having troubles with my lungs from a staph infection that I got in my port, and doctors ignored because they didn't believe that something was going on with me when I said it. So, life was hard. I was declining mentally. I had slipped into a depression where life wasn't enjoyable for me anymore. I was actually going to bed at night praying for God to not allow me to wake up.
That's heartbreaking to hear, because nobody, I don't care who you are, wants to have that feeling. I mean, if that's your standard or your next best quality is going that direction, like it's hard for someone that hasn't felt or felt like that or been in that position to really understand what that would be like. I mean, were the doctors or the healthcare system trying to navigate any other alternate option other than just blood transfusions? I mean, what else were you able to try before you eventually were able to get into CRISPR?
Nothing. I had started regaining hope through my children. Honestly, when I went to my son's school, when he was acting up and the teacher called and she explained that Jamarius is acting up because he thinks you're gonna die. He don't want to be at school anymore because he fears that when he come home his mom won't be there and that you would die and he wouldn't be around to save. So that changed my prayer. That changed my prayer from Lord, allow me to not wake up. So God, please give me something to be here with these children, because I saw how my life was affecting them already. I could only imagine what my death would do to them. So that gave me the energy and the motivation to try again and to research for myself. And that's when I came across an article about a young lady from Chicago who had underwent the haplotransplant and got better. But sickle cell would hit me again and hit me hard, and that would land me into the bigger hospital because I was in bad shape. I couldn't walk again. I had chest pain out of this world. I couldn't use my arms. The pain was so severe I couldn't even raise my hip high enough to get on a bedpan. So this time I'm in the hospital. I have a ketamine infusion going in one arm and a Dilaudid infusion in the next, and I was still in some of the worst pain of my life. And I called in the hospitalists, the head hematologist, nurses, everyone in my room. My husband was standing there and I was crying. I told them, do you guys have any other options besides what I'm doing now? Because I can't continue to live like this. This is not living. I'm only existing and I'm being tortured every day of my life. I asked them about the haplo transplant specifically because that's what I had found. And they all looked at one another and looked back at me and just did this and said, no, we don't know of the haplo transplant and there isn't anything. But I had to go back to faith. When I got home from that hospital stay, which was about another 2 weeks after I pleaded with them, I just prayed, say, God, send me something, please. I'm suffering. I'm tortured. I feel tortured. I'm living hell right now. So say less than 30 days, I got a call from my hematologist, said a hematologist from Nashville had reached out to her and his name was Dr. Hadar Frangul. He wanted to know if she had any patients that was willing to undergo a haplo transplant. And so she sent me to Nashville, Tennessee to meet with Dr. Frangul. I took my husband and my brother with the hopes of my husband being, not my husband, but my brother being my donor. And we did some tests, and my brother was a match, of course, a half match. So Dr. Frankel then explained the risk of graft versus host disease. And he explained that it would be when my cells recognize my brother's cells as foreign and my immune system would attack. So it would be another war going on inside my body. And the medicine basket that I already dreaded looking at every day would double in size with more medicines that I would have to take. And I was afraid. I didn't want that, but I still wanted to do something. So I continued on the testing phase for that because there wasn't anything else, but I prayed about it. And so this time in Nashville, while I was getting a pulmonary function test, I went into crisis, had to be admitted into the hospital for a couple of days. And Dr. Frangul, he approached me at my bedside and he said, Victoria, we have this new study that's about to open. And have you ever heard of CRISPR? And I said, no. And he went on to explain that it's like going into a textbook with thousands and thousands of words, finding that one word that was misspelled, correcting that word without disrupting the story. And then he goes to explain that in theory, CRISPR would go in, turn back on the switch that would restart hemoglobin F for me. And hemoglobin F doesn't sickle. It's the hemoglobin that babies produce while they're in their mother's womb. And in hopes it would cut my crises in half, like split it in half and I would do better. Then he goes to say I would be the first person to do it, which was
Ever.
scary ever for sickle cell disease. And that was scary traveling into the unknown. But I had two questions. My first question was there a chance of graft versus host? When he explained that there wasn't a chance of graft versus host because the cells I would be receiving would be my own, they would take them out, do the edit, and give me back my own cells so my body would recognize itself and not go into attack mode. And my second question, because it was new, wanted to know if it failed, would I still have the option to do a bone marrow transplant with my brother? And when he gave me that guarantee that after 1 year, if nothing had changed for me, I could still move forward, I knew then that this was my answer from God. It had removed one of my biggest fears, which was graft versus host disease, and also gave me the option to have a at least halfway healthier life. But I had no idea that it would take my crisis away completely. And that's what it did for me.
I love how you explained how the doctor explained to you in like the simplest form of how does this work and what does this do, and how they was able to use that analogy of taking a story with thousands of words, taking that one misspelled word out of it, correcting the spelling, putting it back in, and then, having the story like continue and make sense. Because even though we have like different advanced cell therapies that help cure this, it's a very similar thing because it's our very own personal cells is what it is that cures this. For me, it was a depletion of complete white blood cells. They took the tumor, extracted the one cell that mutated, which people have all the time with fighting cancer. It's you have cells that are constantly fighting that off, but when there's too many of the rogue ones and you can't fight them, that's when they mutate. But it's the only thing that made sense to me. It was whatever that made me sick is going to make me better, and it's your cells. And so it's not like they're giving you alternate things. It's a process of what they're doing, and so it's similar in why I love connecting with other people like yourself, to where it's like this ant cell therapy of more or less like a technique. It's your cells that they are correcting and fixing, not giving you something alternate or something different. And so I loved how you explained that, because I was given a Pac-Man analogy of like, after they give you back all your cells, you have Pac-Man, and then they get activated and they go throughout your body and eat up all the dots and cherries. And so for me, that makes sense. You're the very first person they're trying this on. So it's like not like you can go, hey, who else has done this before? Can I ask them questions about what they did, how they did it, what recovery was like, what to expect? How were they able to kind of prepare you for everything?
Well, I still had the book on bone marrow transplant pretty much because the process would be similar. But I reached out to the Sickle Cell Foundation of Tennessee and they connected me with Lionel Embody. Yes, and he had just did a bone marrow transplant, so he was my closest person that I can ask about the chemo experience because that's what I wanted to know about the most was what chemo was going to do to my body. And so I spoke with him, and because I hadn't been associated with any foundation and at all my entire life, speaking with Lionel, I was like, okay, finally someone in this world that understands what I've dealt with, that had some of the same emotions, some of the same struggles. So he was just ending his bone marrow transplant. So he wasn't all the way 100 yet, but just having that one person to talk to while we were both trying to fight this sickle cell battle, that was helpful for me. So I'm grateful to him.
So for the bone marrow transplant and the chemo, is it I want to find out, is it similar to what I did where you do two separate chemos to where they deplete your immune system and then they give you your infusion with CRISPR, and then but you have to basically like wipe out your immune system, right?
Yes, they use busulfan to wipe out my immune system, and getting the busulfan, I think it was about 4 days total, back to back. Those days was uneventful. So I was like, oh, chemo isn't that
It's
bad.
nothing.
Oh, but boy, about two weeks later, it was like everything hits at once. I lose my hair all at once at night. I was mentally prepared for that because I wear wigs. Hey, I just had never saw myself bald. It was funny, because my dad was bald. We always joke with him. So I was like, oh, my kids said, you look like Papa now. But the mucositis, it was no laughing matter at all. I lost my ability not to just eat, but to swallow my own saliva because that was painful. That felt like hot glass and lava going down my throat. So I had to do suction just to get it out of my mouth because it was too painful to swallow. Fatigue, but fatigue was when I say that friend that I lived with my entire life. Sickle cell causes fatigue.
Yeah, you're
So
used to it,
I was
right?
that was normal. Like you tired. Oh, I'm always tired. So some of the symptoms that was there was normal. besides the nausea and mucositis. I hate being nauseous, but that was the side effect of a lot of medications that I've taken my whole life too. So, Dr. Frankel, he knew what to do. He gave me the Finnegan, and I also had a patch that I had to wear behind my ear. But I pushed through this entire CRISPR exchange with perseverance because it was my chance to fight that disease that had been attacking me my whole life. CRISPR was that tool because I used to wonder when I was in the bed, like, how can I defeat something that's embedded in my DNA? This is part of who I am. Like, how can I defeat that? And here comes this tool that allows you to edit your DNA and to take out that gene. Well, it's not taking out the gene, but it's turning on, reactivating the gene that you had from birth, pretty much the BC11A, to turn back on the fetal hemoglobin. So I feel like it's a gift from God that allows people to reactivate something that was already God given, that ability to have hemoglobin F. So
It's
I'm
like
so
it's
grateful.
always been in you. It's just like it wasn't like awake. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody had to go in there and flip the light switch, right?
Yes, and that's exactly how Dr. Frankel explained it. It's like flipping the switch back on. Like, hey, we need some more of that good stuff.
Like something that's so debilitating and sounds complicated is actually a lot more easier than it really seems. You know what I mean?
Yes, we just was missing the technology, and now we
Yeah,
have the technology due to hardworking people that didn't give up. You know, that had this crazy idea. Hey, we see what this bacteria is doing in yogurt. Maybe we can use this bacteria to cut human DNA, which sounds crazy. If someone came to you with that, you're like, wait a
yeah.
minute. But I'm grateful for those people who think outside the box and really stay up late at night to figure out how to make the lives of other human beings more enjoyable, to take away suffering and pain. But they get so much pushback when they have these ideas and sometimes are not supported. So we need to work together to change that.
I mean, that's literally like what is changing history now is that out the box thinking. Like the traditional modes of just doing what's been done before. Like you continue to do that. That's exactly what's going to continue to happen. Is the same thing. So God bless everyone that's out there, like you said, staying up throughout the night and just keep plugging along. I have to ask, from when you enter the hospital for your actual final infusion and your lymphodepletion, how long was that specific hospital stay from the time you entered the hospital until you got released?
It was about a total of 30 days altogether from the time I entered to the time I got released because I needed to isolation.
You said you already had a port in yourself, right?
Well, Dr. Frankel, they had to give me a trifusion catheter because the port that I had before, well, it's not a PIC line. It's a huge catheter with three lines coming out of it. And I received my apheresis, new cells all through there. It's much bigger than a PIC line. But I had problems with ports in the past because of infections and nurses not using the sterile technique when they access them. So that was scary. That was something that I had to overcome mentally, was getting that catheter. Woke up and saw that it was in the exact same spot where the port was that almost killed me.
It's got to be like, well, you don't tell me you just gave me the same thing that was giving me problems before, because that's what it went through my mind.
It was, but I thank God that Dr. Frangoul was understanding. He didn't dismiss my feelings. He let me have that real emotion because I did cry. Because when you have a close call and you had sit months with a hole in your chest and having to be at home with IV infusions, I couldn't take two steps without having to gasp for air because my lungs had been attacked by infection. So when I woke up and I saw it in the exact same spot, I cried. I said, Dr. Frankel, I didn't know you guys was gonna put it there. And he explained that that was the best area. That's where I had the best.
Go straight into your artery,
Yeah.
right?
And he said, I'm sorry, Victoria." He apologized, and I knew that it wasn't something done to hurt me. It was just something I had to overcome mentally, and he understood that.
The compassion from a doctor in his position that's caring for you for one, for this extensive stay that you're about to endure throughout the hospital, but two, like this is a never done before treatment, but to humanize it and to show that they care. I mean, that goes a long way.
It does. It was so far away from the treatment that I had been receiving here in Mississippi. So it was refreshing. I felt like I was in good hands with the whole team that cared and was patient with me, took their time and helped me deal with the emotions, and they understood the fear and hesitations that I had. But their actions spoke louder than any words. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that. I'll tell anyone I didn't just say yes to CRISPR, I said yes to the provider.
Yeah. No, that's it's people can talk the talk, but when you walk the walk, you don't have to say anything. So I want to kind of give the big picture of what this month was like. So when you first entered the hospital, was getting that line in your chest, did they put you in an outpatient surgery type of scenario to where you went under anesthesia, you woke back up, right?
I actually got that line before I went inpatient, because there are
Okay.
plenty of steps that you have to take before you actually go into full inpatient to get your new cells. So I received that line about probably 9 months before I went inpatient, because I needed that line to do the apheresis, and that's when they pour your blood out with a machine and give you donor blood to try to keep you more healthy, prevent crisis. So I was doing that every 4 weeks. And then I also needed that line for stem cell collection. I had to go in the hospital for 3 days, receive a shot in the back of my arm to mobilize my stem cells into my regular blood flow. And I would get back on a machine similar to the apheresis machine. It would pull my blood out, spin it, collect the stem cells, and give the rest of my blood back. So it was, and they did that 3 days back to back. I would go home for a month and come back and get recollected again, because they needed a lot of stem cells, like millions and millions, to withstand editing, travel, and for quality control checks. So, and then they needed a reserve for if this didn't work and my immune system is wiped out, they can at least give me back my original cells, and I'll be in the same position that I was in when I started, and that's having sickle cell disease.
So you had about 9 months of going in back and forth doing that apheresis and all that before you actually entered the hospital for your 30
Yes.
days stay.
Yes, because my cells had to get shipped off to get edited, and once they were edited, that's when Dr. Frankel called me back to Nashville to start my inpatient stay. So I got admitted into the hospital at the end of June. I started the 4 days of chemo, and after the 4 days of chemo, I had 2 days of rest. In July 2nd, 2019 is when my super cells were infused back into my body, 4 valves, and it was quick pushes right into that line. And I was like, that's it. And Dr. Frankel said, that's it, girl. And he high fived me. And nothing had changed yet. I had just got the new cells, but I began to cry because I felt like I was being reborn. I knew something would change. Even though this hadn't been done before, I just knew my life was going to change. I knew God didn't take me through all that to not deliver on the promise that He made me in private. And that's to give me a life to live to see my children grow up, to be at the graduations, weddings, just to be a part of their lives is what I longed for.
So July 2nd, 2019, would you call that like your day zero? I guess essentially like the day where like, you finally hit the mountain peak and then
Yes, July 2nd is my day zero. I count that as my rebirth day. I celebrate it every year. So July 2nd of this year would be 6 years for me that I had my second chance at life.
that's incredible. I'm sitting here thinking that I know exactly where I was at July 2nd, 2019, because I was on my relapse of fighting colitis.
Wow.
And I had went on a family vacation thing from Dallas to Denver, Colorado on my dad's side of the family for a 4th of July thing, and I should have never have went because I was just released from the hospital. I was on this taper program from prednisone, and it was causing me to relapse because I was tapering too much. And I remember exactly how I felt, what was going on during that summer. But it's weird how those dates that are such significant milestones, whether they're good or bad or how they change, how they'll always be imprinted in you, of how it completely changed your life like forever. It's literally like the birth of your second life. You know what I mean? That's wild. Okay, so you get your infusion on that day. How many days did they have to monitor you and pull labs to double check all your levels until they felt safe about releasing you from the hospital after that day zero?
I was getting checked every day, labs every day. I received one transfusion of platelets to get my platelet count up, and things started to get better. I was able to go home. It was about 30 days isolation. So about 28 days. After that, I was able to not come home to Mississippi, but move to an apartment that was close to the hospital because I still needed to be monitored. I had no immune system, so I needed to be close to the hospital just in case something went wrong to be able to get there and get there fast because they explained that if I had fever or anything, I only had a few minutes to get there. And that's why I needed to still be close to the center. But by the grace of God, I didn't have any adverse side effects. Things were going so good. I was able to come home early and surprise my children.
That's badass.
Yes.
How long were you having to have that apartment? Like a couple of weeks, a month?
No, I was in that apartment about a month and a half
Okay,
there
so about
in
6 weeks.
Nashville. Yeah. About yeah, 6.
So about 30 days in the hospital afterwards. So you got like another month or so close by so they can keep an eye on you. After you were able to leave state and go back home, how often did you have to go back on site for follow-ups, or did you even have to go back on site?
I had to go back monthly at first.
And then at what point did they change from once a month to every quarter, every 3 months or
Went
6 months?
from once a month. I think I did once a month. My memory isn't that great. Once a month for about 4 months, and then I transitioned to 3 months, going every 3 months, and then that transition into every 6 months. Last year, I finally made it to where I can only go once a year.
Was that a part of your initial consent when you signed your deal? It was what, like a 5-year sign, and then after that they just would extend your long-term follow-up, or did you
Yes,
have like a long-term new consent?
I had a long-term new consent, to consent for the full total of 15 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Do you know how many other people are in your trial? I know that you're the first one, you're patient number one, but would do you get updated on all that data and
I
stuff?
think it was 39 in total, if I'm not mistaken, but about 39 people.
Are you able to go look at those poster abstracts they have at all these conferences and go, "That's
Oh,
me"?
oh yes. When I see the abstracts, of course, I know I'm the patient at the top. I'm number one who hadn't had any events after treatment. So I know where I am. And I look
That's
at
awesome
that.
because they don't say on there, "This is Victoria Gray."
Right.
It's a letter and a number and a data point, and,
They
I
can't say that by law. But
yeah.
yeah, it makes me proud to be that person, to take a look back and see all the dots before of my hospital stays and to see the dots after are non-existent.
Well,
And I just couldn't
the
believe it.
it's a visual. Yeah.
Right. And I go back to the initial conversation Dr. Frangul and I had. He didn't make any promises, and we were just hoping to cut it in half. Just cut it in half. And it went to zero for me. And I can't be more grateful.
Somebody's always gotta be the first, like Emily Whitehead, she was the
Yes.
first for CAR T as a pediatric, not the first to do CAR T, but as a pediatric, and kinda set the tone after somebody set the first of the wall, I say, is always the bloodiest because you never know.
Right?
It could work, it could not work, but people like ourselves, we have to be willing and wanting to do whatever it is for one, improvement for ourselves, our family lives. But I remember looking at it like, hopefully it's gonna work. I had to mentally place myself like there's no other options. It's either works or it doesn't. But at the end of the day, like, hopefully this will eventually get approved and it'll be able to help other people. And
Yes.
last week at the Deloitte working group I was at, I got to meet Jimmy, and we sat on that panel next to each other. And he said that he became familiar with it and could see that it does work by hearing your story.
Yes, and that's a feeling like none other. When I was first able to meet Jimmy and to know that my decision not only changed my life, but it changed Jimmy's life and the life of so many other people. It helped me know that I had purpose. And I like to say now that I was flawed for purpose. All the Lord, why, and why am I the oddball out? Felt like the black sheep. But it was for a purpose. Like I went into that treatment with faith and not fear, praying that God let this work for me because I know if it worked for me, what it would do for others in the community. I know I wasn't the only person suffering. I know I wasn't the only person that felt helpless, hopeless, voiceless, and was tired. So I knew if it worked for me, the hope it would give, not only just hope, but hope and relief it would give to other people and their family because sickle cell is a disease that not just affect the person that's living with it, but it affects all the people that love that person, not just family, but friends also. I saw how it was affecting my children. It was affecting my husband. It had affected my mom. And before my grandmother passed away, I was 14. She prayed out loud, so I heard her prayer. She would always cry out for me and for God to heal me. So it was something that was constantly on her mind. And being told, I can't imagine the feeling that my mom had. You know, you holding your firstborn daughter, and for doctors to tell you that she's going to get taken away from you in 7 years, and you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do to stop it. To give this hope to other parents that when they hear that their child has sickle cell disease, it is not the death sentence that it was in 1985 when my mom received.
Yeah, it's what we call now, these are curative treatments. You're not going in and getting an infusion or the traditional mold of, here's what we have, we can treat you. That you want to hear the words that we can cure you. And, like no patient goes, yeah, like I want to spend forever going in and getting treated and having this quality of life for lengthy periods of time and maintaining insurance and paying deductibles. And life is expensive as it is. I mean, like there's all these curative therapies out here, and it's this advanced cell therapy realm of whether it's CAR T or TILs or CRISPR that are leading in what it's called, precision medicine. This is the future of what medicine's going to be like down the road at some point when people hear the word cancer, they're not going to, assume like chemo and stuff. They're going to be like, oh, like cell therapy. Which one are you doing?
Yeah, that's the hopes. That's the hopes for all diseases. They're even looking into moving to treat things like diabetes, high cholesterol, so many debilitating diseases that are coming. So it just gives us a new weapon in the fight of disease. So it's an exciting time. There's more research to be done, of course, and some things to critique, but they're out here transforming lives. I know we're not allowed to say cure quite yet, but
I say it. I don't care.
I know you
I
don't.
don't give a shit.
I know you don't, but it's definitely life transforming. I feel like I've been cured, honestly, because my life has been changed. My life had been tethered to the hospital and ER and to um, opioids my entire life. So much to when I woke up pain free without medication, I thought I was dead because that was all I knew. So it has really transformed my life in a way that I could have never imagined.
Something I want to bring up, which I know is not talked about a lot, but when you could feel that everything was working, was there any kind of detox program that was brought to you? When you're on a lifetime of being on opioids, it's can be hard to withdraw off of all that. I know from firsthand experience. Is the clinical trial or the hospital system, were they able to provide or guide you in how to deal with any upcoming withdrawals or anything, or did you just do it cold turkey?
Well, I asked Dr. Frankel about getting off of the medications just to see where I stood pain wise. So he along with his pharmacist, they provided me a taper guideline on how to taper off of it safely. So I started that taper, but because of COVID and I couldn't get the next dose down when it came to the fentanyl patch, I just Walmart wasn't getting the shipment in. I had to go cold turkey, and but I was determined. It was terrible, but at the end, I reached out to Dr. Frangoul and I kind of told him what was going on. They did give me methadone, but I was pretty much already over it. I had went through the worst parts of it, and I tapered off the methadone pretty quickly. And that's when I woke up. Once I was completely done with all the medicines, pain free for the first time ever in life. And it was scary. It was scary. I just couldn't believe it because it's the type of freedom that I only thought I would see in death. But here I was, very much alive and pain free. I didn't have to remind myself to take a deep breath. My breaths was going down unrestricted. The pain that I had lived with almost forever in my lower back and hips were gone. It was
That's amazing. I
yes.
mean, that kind of pain that doesn't go away and you have to stay ahead of the pain, not like wait for it to kick in and then you're taking meds because it's nobody would ever necessarily know that that's what was going on with inside you, as you're walking around with sickle cell or stage 4 cancer. And I remember specifically when I was put on a palliative pack of pain meds, I'm hearing the word palliative and I'm like, that sounds like hospice. That sounds like ending thing. But they told me, like, look, you have this terminal cancer and you have to stay ahead of it. And so I was like, okay. And they said when come on the other side of this that we can figure out a way to bring you off of it. So I willingly was just proactively taking, I had the fentanyl patch and hydrocodones and the Dilaudid and all this and that, like daily vitamins. I became my normal and I didn't even attempt to taper off any of that until I knew that my scans were clear, because if I fall behind on the pain, that is like a living hell to try to catch up back in the hospital getting infusions. And so I ended up doing the same thing. I was on a 75 milligram patch and then I tapered down to 50 and then to 25. But what helped me kind of do a lot of that was I was making can of butter and making sugar cookies. And
Right.
that, I mean,
I
and it
get it.
helped. I mean, because the cold turkey part of that, it's like my joints in my body felt like they had no lubrication. And I'd wake up and feel this awkward, just shitty, feeling. And it was to try to transition out of that. But there's not always necessarily a plan up front. And these are the questions that I'm talking about when signing consents and having new consents written, that if you are on a palliative pack of pain meds, that here's the program that we can help provide, to come off of it, and that you are supported in doing that.
Yes.
And because that's not everybody always is real vocal about asking for that help. And it's one of those things where it's like I would love to see more proactive approach to the patient and their family, and saying like, hey, I understand that you might not be vocalizing it as much, but just want to let you know that we have these programs in place. We have this protocol that we've kind of mapped out, and here's how it would look, and this and that. And there necessarily wasn't anything like that for me. And so I asked that to everybody that's been in your position, where you've been on a palliative pack of narcotics for a while and then you have to
Yes.
come off of it. And that physical part of it can also play an emotional part of, your healing. You know what I mean? And so I'm glad to see you were supported so much within that space in that realm. Now, correct me, was it in December or October or December of 2023 when sickle cell was approved?
It was December.
It was December 2023, and
Yes.
that's the first ever FDA approval across the board. Now, was that what they call like an accelerated approvals or confirmatory trial that they're doing in conjunction with it, or is that just it? Is it a first line treatment?
That's just it. They approved 2 that day. One has a black box warning. But yeah, I don't know what the process would be. Like, would you have to try or to see if you have a bone marrow donor first? But for many sickle cell patients, we don't have a suitable bone marrow donor, especially for African Americans. The pool is very shallow when it comes to donorship for bone marrow, organs, all of the above. So it's harder. So I feel like gene therapy within itself, it opens the door because you wouldn't need a donor.
Yeah, say they're your cells.
Our biggest challenge is going to be price because the treatment we're looking at $2-3 million treatments. So many of us can't afford that. You're not born into wealth or with the silver spoon, and it would be a challenge for our families to try to come up with that fund, and almost impossible for the majority of us to undergo that treatment. So that's the biggest challenge that sickle cell warriors are facing now when it comes to gene therapy is coverage from insurance companies, and not just private insurance but government assisted insurance companies like Medicaid, Medicare programs. So I'm praying it's something in the works. It was. So I don't know where that is right now since the administration changed. But that's one thing that needs to be worked on is how to do it with the same efficiency, but at a lower cost where it's affordable to others.
Think that's universal across the board right now in all like cell and gene therapies, because when you're looking at one-time treatment, but the insurance companies and the payers see this high price tag, and it's like, well, what you pay for, it's a one-time treatment. Now you can do multiple treatments over a period of time, and those numbers add up too. And so I'm very specific about telling the industry that it's like a business, and it shouldn't necessarily be a business. Unfortunately, it is. And there's got to be a middle ground somewhere to where there's a collaboration efforts within the industry that a lot of competing parts going on. I see them at these conferences and different things, but they're all like kind of fighting for the same bucket of cash and the same amount of patience. But I try to tell everybody, imagine it's either you or somebody you know, and what are you willing to do in order to get to the other side to actually like be cured. Medical realm is the way it is and has such protocols go through. These are biologics, they're customized, and so there's not a traditional mode of like here's the approval process. It's a really kind of a strange time, but also a very unique time, I think, for medicine.
Yes, it is. You said that right.
Like,
It's challenging, but it's a unique time because what these therapies mean for everyone. If we can continue to get them funded, they can change and touch almost everyone's life because someone knows someone that either has a rare disease, cancer, sickle cell disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, blindness, and the list goes on to what the potential of these type of treatments have. So we need to do whatever we can to make it affordable. And I think it's going to take working together and coming up with some strategies. And those ideas should include the patient and how,
100%.
yes, they should include the patient because my grandmother and friends have, I've heard so many people say this, if you hadn't faced any challenges in life, all you have to do is keep living. Everyone is going to face something at some point in time. So we need to think about this stuff realistically. We're all humans, and I think COVID showed all of us that no matter who you are, what tax bracket you're in, your health is just as
Yeah, this
fragile, and there was so much loss with it. So we all need one another to get through. Don't know when the next pandemic is going to strike us. So we really need to value human life in each other over dollar. There's something that's more valuable.
100%. We're not in the days of bartering and trading, like where it's unfortunately we all have to have a source of income. And I'm a huge advocate for having patients like ourselves that are the proofs of concept that these curative therapies work, be in attendance and be on the panels, and be more inclusive part of trial design, consent design, what the whole process is, the peer connect systems. And I don't have TV anymore. I cut that off like a couple of years ago. It's too expensive. Yeah, I got rabbit ears. But when I do watch any TV, the advertisements are few and far between for like say cancer treatments or anything else, and it's whoever has the higher dollar that can spend those on their marketing campaign. It's like the world of 2025. It's doing what we're doing individually. Anybody can post on social media, anybody can make a podcast. I think the what's lacking in the realm of the big picture is that people just don't even know that these kind of therapies exist. And so when they go to their hospital system, no matter where it is, unless they already kind of have some questions to ask or a little bit of knowledge about what they're looking into, they're being left and told to what the hospital system has. And, they're not like laying out everything that exists everywhere and then giving you options. They're just kind of telling you what you have or what they have within their organization. It's not necessarily within their interest to be like, okay, we have a social worker or somebody that's what their job is, that's an independent party that's, not biased to our organization, and they'll let you know anything that's anywhere. And, if you have the means or are able or capable to want to go do this or try that, then, that's should be left within the power of the patient and their family for, what I mean? And so I just, I'm very vocal about trying to tell the biotherapeutics and every part of the industry that's curing patients like ourselves to, one, create the budget, and in the market of like helping us use our voices, to educate the patient population, because that's what patients want to hear from, as other people that have done it before and what to kind of anticipate. But then also to show the industry that these are proofs of concept, and like if you kind of give a little, you can take a little, and it's the collaborative effort of involving and seeing like, hey, here here's the reality of, curative treatments. I was so ecstatic when we first met because we just sat down that first night, before the Believe Ball, and you were with your family, like eating dinner, and I pulled up with my brother, and then actual night of the Believe Ball, I remember taking that picture with me, you, Emily, Tom, and was that your husband? Was that he in the picture with us also? Yeah, and it's like, just me, you, and Emily next to each other. It's three separate, diseases, three separate, curative treatments, all with like historical significance. Like you and Emily were the first within your trials, and I was the last within mine. And I feel like we should be on like a speaking tour and or make like a documentary with us all. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time to chat with me. I want to, continue these conversations and try to help each other out with being able to help promote, advanced therapies. I mean, like you're like a walking miracle, and God has definitely blessed you. Like,
Yes,
so thankful for you.
and I thank you for having me, because this is what it's going to take. Everyone working together to elevate our voices together on these curative slash transformative therapies and what they can do for other people. Because, like you said, most hospitals you go into, they're only offering what they can do. They're not really sending patients off or saying, hey, I know we can't help you here, but Mass General has this program, or Sarah Cannon has this they're not offering this. Most patients are getting their information from social media or reaching out to patients like us who've done it, because they really value that firsthand experience, and to hear it from pretty much the horse's mouth, someone who has already lived the life that they're currently living and undergone this treatment and are years, because I'm about 6 years out from the treatment, to see how it has lasted. That is what makes the difference, and that is what get patients signed on and motivated to do new clinical trials.
Absolutely. I'm just a little over 5+ years out, but I feel that if you can get to these things sooner rather than later, you can preserve the quality of life along with the quantity of life, and that's the whole point. So I want to try to put together something to where, me, you, and the other people that are within our realm of, recipients of advanced cell therapies can, like I said, be able to amplify the patient voice and literally like change how the organizations and just the medical system like approaches it. So we'll try to figure something out. But I'll want to thank you again. I appreciate you so much, Victoria, and thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris.
All right, that concludes today's episode of TIL Talks with Chris White, as we talk TILs, tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, and all advanced cell and gene therapies. As a reminder, I am not a medical professional or medical expert. I am only a professional and expert on my story and my experience. If you are needing or seeking medical advice or assistance, please reach out to your care team. I'd like to thank my guest today for joining me on TIL Talks. To our listeners who have not yet done so already, please follow, comment, subscribe, share, and smash that like button. For more information about TIL Talks and related resources, please visit www.tiltalks.com. I'm Chris White. As always, sending love to everybody. Peace.